the government has provided to the Department of Parliamentary Services to support the implementation of Operation Watt's recommendations that relate to the operation of Parliament. To outline some of the key features of the bill, as noted, the bill will establish a Parliamentary Workplace Standards and Integrity Commission to receive, manage, investigate and resolve allegations of parliamentary misconduct and public interest complaints. The bill will also strengthen Victoria's parliamentary standards and integrity framework by establishing the existing Parliamentary Integrity Advisor in legislation to provide confidential advice and training to members of Parliament, ministers and parliamentary secretaries. Establishing a Parliamentary Ethics Committee in legislation to foster an ethical parliamentary workplace. Amending the Members of Parliament Standards Act 1978, including to update the MP Code of Conduct to create positive obligations for members to create a safe workplace and demonstrate respect for the Commission and Parliamentary Integrity Advisor, and amending other relevant acts to integrate the Commission and Parliamentary Integrity Advisor into Victoria's existing parliamentary standards and integrity framework. Under the bill, members of Parliament will have a positive obligation to foster a healthy, safe, respectful and inclusive environment in the parliamentary workplace that is free from bullying, sexual harassment, assault and discrimination. This is what Victorians expect and deserve of their elected representatives. Members of Parliament will also be required to demonstrate respect for parliamentary standards, including to respect the Parliamentary Workplace Standards and Integrity Commission, for example, by complying with a reasonable request made. A new independent Parliamentary Workplace Standards and Integrity Commission is a key feature of the bill. There will be up to 3 commissioners, 1 full-time commissioner that will also be the chair of the commission, and 2 that can be appointed on a full-time, part-time or sessional basis. The 3-commissioner model is one of the key elements taken from the Jenkins report, namely the need to have commissioners with the right skills to deal with inappropriate workplace behaviour and improve workplace culture. Commissioners will also be independent and appropriately skilled. A person will not be eligible as a commissioner if they have been in the last 5 years a member of an Australian Parliament, local council or registered political party or on the register of lobbyists. Commissioners will have complementary skills and expertise in areas such as government, industrial relations, law, public sector governance or administration and public sector ethics and integrity. Under the bill, the Commission will have jurisdiction to receive complaints about members of Parliament, ministers and parliamentary secretaries about parliamentary misconduct. Any person can make a report to the Commission, including anonymously. Allowing the Commission to receive anonymous complaints will encourage people to report misconduct without fear of reprisal or potential repercussions. This is consistent with recommendations from the Jenkins report and is consistent with complaints to IBAC and Victoria's Public Interest Disclosures Scheme. The Commission will promote a no wrong door approach for complaints about misconduct and be able to give and receive referrals to ensure matters are dealt with by the most appropriate integrity body. This includes the Commission's ability to receive public interest disclosures about current and former members of Parliament, ministers and parliamentary secretaries. The Commission will refer these disclosures to IBAC for assessment as a clearinghouse for public interest disclosures. If IBAC determines that a disclosure is a public interest complaint that also meets the definition of parliamentary misconduct, it can refer it back to the Commission for investigation. In relation to any current MP, the bill defines parliamentary misconduct as breaches of the MP Code of Conduct, a willful, repeated or deliberate contravention of the member register of interests, a willful, repeated or deliberate misuse of work-related parliamentary allowances, a willful, repeated or deliberate misuse of the Electorate Office and Communications budget, inappropriate parliamentary workplace behaviour. In relation to a person in their capacity as a minister or parliamentary secretary, the bill defines parliamentary misconduct as inappropriate parliamentary workplace behaviour. Parliamentary misconduct applies to former MPs, ministers and parliamentary secretaries if the conduct was engaged in when they were an MP, minister or parliamentary secretary. Parliamentary misconduct also applies to a former Member of Parliament in their capacity as a former member if it relates to a breach of Section 15 of the MP Standards Act, which applies to former members who must not take improper advantage of any office held as a Member of Parliament after they cease to be a member. To protect the rights and wellbeing of all parties involved in the reporting and investigation process, the bill will contain appropriate safeguards on the Commission's discretion and powers. The Commission will have a power to issue confidentiality notices to protect the privacy, safety, welfare and reputation of those involved in an investigation as the circumstances require. People subject to such notices will still be able to seek advice and support as appropriate. Investigations will also be subject to appropriate procedural fairness protections. The bill requires the Commission to not prejudice legal or criminal investigations or proceedings by other integrity agencies. It will be a criminal offence to provide false or misleading information to the Commission, such as false complaints. The Commission will first need to determine whether it has jurisdiction to deal with a complaint. The Commission must dismiss any complaint that relates to conduct that occurred before it was established or where the complaint is not supported by sufficient evidence. The Commission will have discretion to dismiss complaints which are lacking in substance or credibility, trivial, frivolous or vexatious, not made in good faith, related to an allegation of conduct engaged in at the time that is too remote to justify an investigation, otherwise unjustifiable or unnecessary to deal with. The Commission will also have discretion to dismiss a complaint that has already been dealt with. An integrity body, a law enforcement agency, an entity with the power to require the production of documents or the answering of questions, or a prescribed entity. The Commission will then have discretion to decide how to deal with a complaint, but will be required to deal with it as quickly and with as little formality as possible. All parties want complaints to be dealt with as quickly and with as little formality as possible, so this will be an important aspect of the Commission's framework. This will include the use of appropriate dispute resolution. An appropriate dispute resolution process may only take place if all the participants agree to the process. This is important as there may be some matters that all parties wish to see mediated. Following an appropriate dispute resolution process, the Commission will prepare an outcome report unless it is not in the public interest to do so. The report, if produced, will be provided to the Premier if in relation to a person in their capacity as a Minister or Parliamentary Secretary, or otherwise to the relevant Privileges Committee if in relation to a Member of Parliament or the Premier. If the Commission decides to investigate or is otherwise required to investigate if a matter is a public interest complaint, the Commission will have the appropriate powers to investigate, including the power to request any document, information or other thing that the Commission considers necessary for an investigation and request a person to attend an interview. If a current or former Member of Parliament does not comply with an investigation request from the Commission without a reasonable excuse, the Commission has the power to report the current or former Member of Parliament to the relevant House. Parliament will then have discretion to decide whether to take any action. The Commission will also be able to recommend sanctions for non-compliance as part of its final investigative report. The Commission does not have coercive investigation powers, and these are generally only appropriate in exceptional circumstances, such as anti-corruption investigations. The Commission is also required to issue guidelines about its functions and will need to outline a person's rights and responsibilities whenever they issue an investigation request. This is read baseless complaints. This is a reasonable bill designed for reasonable and legitimate complaints. No one wants the Commission dealing with baseless or politically motivated complaints. As noted above, the Commission will be empowered to dismiss complaints on a range of grounds, including if they lack substance or credibility, are not made in good faith, are unsupported by sufficient evidence, or are trivial, vexatious, or made on frivolous grounds. The bill also empowers the Commission to dismiss complaints if the person who made the complaint has been aware of the alleged conduct for more than 12 months. Under the bill, it is a criminal offence punishable by up to 12 months prison to give false or misleading information to the Commission. The bill has confidentiality protections to protect the integrity of investigations and privacy of people involved in a matter. In conducting an investigation, the Commission will also be bound by the rules of procedural fairness. The bill also requires the Commission to issue guidelines on how it will dismiss complaints, including complaints that are unfounded and politically motivated. The last thing anyone in this place wants are attempts to weaponise or politicise the work of the Commission. At the conclusion of an investigation, the Commission will be required to prepare an investigative report. The bill provides for various requirements relating to investigative reports, such as providing a Member of Parliament or Minister with an opportunity to respond to an adverse comment or finding, and maintaining the confidentiality of the person who made the referral as required. The investigative report will be provided to the Premier if in relation to a person in their capacity as a Minister or Parliamentary Secretary, or otherwise the relevant Privileges Committee if in relation to a Member of Parliament or the Premier. Consistent with the existing lines of responsibility in Victoria's system of government, investigative reports relating to the conduct of an MP, including the Premier, will be provided to the relevant Privileges Committee for their consideration and tabling in Parliament. And investigative reports related to ministers, parliamentary secretaries and the Cabinet Secretary will be provided to the Premier for consideration and tabling. It will then be the responsibility of the relevant Privileges Committee or Premier to ensure the report is tabled in Parliament within the timeframes set in the bill. If the Commission's investigative report recommends sanctions in relation to serious parliamentary misconduct, improper conduct or detrimental action, the Privileges Committee or Premier will also be required to prepare their own report in response to address the recommended sanctions. If the final sanctions recommended by the Privileges Committee or imposed by the Premier depart from what was recommended by the Commission, the Privileges Committee or Premier will have to include in their report any explanation for these differences. Investigative reports will generally have to be tabled in Parliament unless it would not be in the public interest to do so. The Commission will decide whether it's in the public interest and will provide a summary report that is appropriate to be tabled if so. Once a report is tabled in Parliament, the Commission will be then able to publish the report on its website. There are a range of sanctions that can be imposed by either the Commission, a House of Parliament or the Premier. If a parliamentary misconduct matter is sustained, the Commission will have the power to directly impose sanctions, including a requirement to issue a public apology in a manner and form determined by the Commission, give a written apology or explanation to an affected person, participate in an education or training program determined by the Commission, participate in mediation with an affected person, or enter into a behaviour agreement with the presiding officer of the House of which they are a member. In relation to serious parliamentary misconduct, improper conduct or detrimental action matters that are substantiated, the Commission will only be able to recommend a sanction to the relevant oversight entity, such as to the Premier in relation to a Minister or the Privileges Committee of the House to which the member belongs. In relation to the Premier, this includes a requirement to give a written... Pardon me, Acting President, it seems I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.